Okay, anytime.
Hi, my name is Dixie Howard, and I'm interviewing Alberta Brown. Alberta, could you say hi to everyone and tell us your full name?
Why, hello there. I am Lydia Alberta Ward Brown.
Okay, and was you named after someone in your family?
I sure was. I was named.
Is that her picture?
Yes, I was named for my grandmother Ward, and her name was Lydia Jane Fogelman Ward. So, Mother had named each of the ones before me for a grandparent, John Lester, Mary Armina, and Bessie Lucille, Lyle Franklin, Nettie Alene, and then I came along, so I was named Lydia Alberta after my grandmother Lydia.
How old are you, Alberta?
I'm 80 years. I'm not. Oh, I backed up, didn't I? I'm 90 years old now, as of October the 10th.
And what year was you born?
1920. So it's easy to remember. 10, 10, 20.
Yeah. And I see a picture of a house. Is this where you was born?
It sure was. This brick home was built by my great-grandfather, Thornton A. Ward, and it was built along the old National Trail in the mid-1800s, they tell me. And would you believe that only Wards have lived there, but there were 5 generations of Wards lived in that fine 10-roomed big brick home. And
I see another picture of a house here.
Yes.
Is this your parents?
This is my grandparents, and
They was the ones that built the house?
no, it was built by my great-grandparents, but this is the second owner, who was my grandfather, grandfather John Ward, and his wife Lydia Jane, for whom I was named, and then that's their family living in with them, and even the great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, is living there with them in that picture.
Okay, and we have another picture here of the old homes.
Yes, now this picture, this is the way it looked when I lived there, and it was built, my own grandfather built the wide porch, and oh, that was the greatest porch to sit on. And it was a great place to sleep in the summertime when it was hot. We'd sleep out on the porch, and this is the family. My mother and my father were just going together at that time when this picture was made.
And who was your grandparents? Or is this your parents?
This is my own mother and dad. This is their engagement picture. John Harrison Ward and Gracie Fern Green, then at that time.
And this is your grandparents?
Yes, this is my father's parents, John Madison Ward and Lydia Jane Fogelman Ward.
And we have another one here.
Yes, now this is my mother's parents, and you'll see my sister Mary peeking up there behind them, but this is Franco Green and Nettie Chapman Green. They were really great-grandparents. They were great, but not my great-grandparents.
I never noticed the girl there before.
She's peeking through there, peeking there behind them. That was my sister Mary.
And the guy with the Colonel Sanders mustache and beard?
Yes, that's the builders of the home. That's my great-grandfather, Thornton A. Ward, and his wife, Elizabeth Ellen Crozier Ward. And if you want to know my great-grandparents on my mother's side, my grandfather's father was William Green, and my mother's grandmother was Margaret Gardner Green.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, there were 10 in the family, so I had 5 brothers and 4 sisters, And this picture was taken when my brother Lyle was in the Marines. And let's see, I should have them back here so I can tell how they're named from right to left. I'll try to remember to do that.
Now, was all of these born in the brick home?
No, I'm glad you asked that. The first 5 were born in a little home that my dad and lived in, of which later we lived in it, and most of my children were born in the little house that they lived in to begin with. But they didn't move into the brick home until just before I was born.
I see another group of. Is this your
yes,
brothers and sisters?
this is the same brothers and sisters, and if you'll notice, my dad is standing in the place of my brother Lyle, who was in the Marines, and he couldn't be there. But this picture was taken after my mother passed away a few years after that, and my brother Lyle was in the service, so he couldn't be there, but they took the picture and my dad stood in his place.
Well. And when were you married?
Well, we were married on August the 15th in 1940. Jesse Edsel Brown was my husband's name.
Well, tell us a little bit about your courtship with Edsel.
Okay, now that's why I have these pictures here. I was going to Hamilton School, but I think it's interesting to note that Hamilton School was where 5 generations of Wards went to school. And I'll show you first of all, this is the original Hamilton School. And if you'll notice a little boy here at this side with a ruffly collar, that's my father. And he went to Hamilton School. Then when he was about 8 years old, Hamilton School, the brick Hamilton School was made, and they said it was made a really nice school, but they could afford to do it because the railroad had run through there, so they got taxes or something off the railroad, built this nice Hamilton School. It's interesting to note that's where my father went, that's where I went to school, and that's where my son went to school, and that's where our son went to school. So there were 5 generations went to Hamilton School.
Now, is this Hamilton School also?
Yes, this is me going to Hamilton School, and I'm the little girl. Let's see, the second on the left. I was a little second grader at that time. Now I want you to notice, if you can see, the bottom of my dress didn't match the top part of my dress, and I'm telling you that for a reason, because as we would outgrow our clothes, Mom would just add a little bit to the bottom of the dress. And I'll tell you in a little while why I mentioned that to you.
Okay, you want to tell us some more about your courtship with Edsel? You went to school together?
Now that's why we wanted to show the schoolhouse. When I was in the 7th grade, Mr. Henry Seeley was my teacher.
You want to tell the people?
Yes, when I was in the 7th grade, Mr. Henry Seeley was my teacher. He had heard that Christian Run School, a little school about maybe 2 miles from Hamilton School, they had put on a play, and Henry Seeley, my teacher, asked if they would like to come down and put on that play for us. Oh, we were delighted to have them to come down. So they presented the play, and at the recess time, it was a bad day, so we couldn't go outside to play. So we went down to our nice big basement in the Hamilton School, and Edsel, in his strong little heart, had decided that day when he saw me, he didn't know my name or anything, but for some reason he felt a deep what would you call it? Anyhow, he
Attraction?
said, and he decided that day that that little gal was the one he wanted to marry.
And how old was he?
He was in the 8th grade,
Well.
and I was in the 7th grade. But sorry to tell you, I didn't even thinking about him because my mind was in my box of movie star pictures. So I wasn't interested in him, but he never, that thought never left him from the day on that he found out my name. And let me tell you, at the recess time, we went down to the basement to play a game, and it was drop the handkerchief. So we all had to hold hands to make the circle. Then we dropped our hands, and he said he made sure he got to stand beside me, and he got to hold my hand. So that was the beginning. As far as you look back on it, that was the beginning of our courtship.
Now, how about your first date?
Well, it was a long time before we had our first date, but we went to the same church, and we were together in what we called Epworth League, and we called ourselves the Salem Gang. So we would be at the get-togethers together, and he told me this later. He said that his heart was always, he knew that that was the girl he wanted to marry. So that was, it was such a pleasant thing to know later.
So where was you married?
We were married down in Henderson, Kentucky. At that time, we had planned to be married, and my mother said that we'll have us a nice little church wedding. But she was ill, and she just didn't get better. She was in and out of the hospital, and we had waited and waited. So we decided, we talked it over with my father, and he said, why don't you two just slip away someplace and get married, and we won't worry your mother because you're not going to get to have a nice wedding like she planned. So that's what we did. We slipped away to Henderson, Kentucky, and we got married.
And was it at a church or
no? It was in the minister's home. But let me tell you, we had quite a time. On the road, we had to wait at the Edelbrick Shoe Company where Edsel worked. We had to wait for his paycheck, which, as I remembered, was around $25
for a week.
Then we went down to Kentucky, but there was all kinds of road repairs, and we didn't get started until about 12:30, somewhere near there. And there was all kinds of road repairs, and it was the hottest blazes. We didn't have any air conditioning in the car, so he took his shirt off so it would keep it nice. But we got down to Henderson, and it was getting so near to the closing time that he didn't take time to put his shirt on. So we went racing down the walk, and there's a picture there someplace that'll show that. So anyhow, we ran in to get our marriage license, and we signed our names and put our age down, and the clerk looked up at us, and he kind of raised his head. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was at 19." And he said, "You have to be 21.
Oh.
I thought, oh, we've driven this distance and can't get married. So he saw the situation. He said, I'll tell you what, you just walk back out the door and come back in, and you'll be 21. So I've always felt bad about that because I wasn't used to telling lies and getting by with it.
So what was your dress like?
Well, that's interesting too. Didn't have money to buy a new dress, but I had my class day dress that I had worn only one time, and it was pretty. It had a satiny under layer and then a lacy overlayer, and but it reached my ankles when I had little below my ankles when I wore it for class day, but I didn't want it that way. So hurriedly that morning before we left for Henderson, I cut it off and re-hemmed it. But it was my class day dress, but I never had a picture taken with it on.
Well, was your stitches small or were they great?
Oh
big?
no, I was always very particular with my stitching. So it was stitched nicely, but it was just it wasn't a big fancy wedding dress, but it was fancy enough for me.
So when you first got married, where did you live?
Well, since my mother was ill, I got a little secret to tell you there. My mother was ill, so we still didn't tell her that we were married. We didn't want to disappoint her, thinking that we weren't expecting her to get well so we could have our wedding that we had planned. So again, we talked it over with my father, and he said, well, we just won't need to mention it to Mom. But Edsel was down there every night for supper. Well, she got to thinking it over, and she said, well, it looks like I'm not getting well very quickly. Said, why don't you and Edsel just go ahead and get married? Maybe you can have a simple wedding. So I grinned at her, and I said, well, Mom, I have to tell you, we've been married for 3 weeks. So that,
was she surprised?
Well, she just gave her blessing. Yes, I mean, she was surprised.
So how many children do you and Edsel have?
Well, we have 5 children.
And
this is a picture. I wanted to tell you about the Hamilton School, that this is the 5th generation of kids that went to Hamilton School.
Wow.
And that was
another one?
Well, I have to decide which picture to use.
Okay.
And this is Edsel. This is how he looked, and this is his picture in his school. But this is a little better picture of how he looked. And he's on the end, and that was his teacher, the one that Mr. Seeley contacted to put on the play for us.
And here's some ladies.
Well, now this, I didn't have a picture. I didn't find my picture as a 7th grader, but this is my 8th grade picture. And I didn't go to Hamilton School that year. My mother was eager that we children all take up musical instruments. So I went to Greenup School, and I took up the violin, and I played that year. And this is my 8th grade graduation dress, and I was valedictorian, and I was so proud. Those sleeves were double ruffle sleeves, and I thought that was so special.
Now, this is the Greenup School?
And I graduated, went ahead then, and I graduated from Greenup High School. And this is my graduation picture.
Okay, and is that Edsel?
And this is Edsel's graduation picture. We still kept company in the same group, but I was interested in this young man from the 8th, met him in the 8th grade, and Edsel, he said he spent many a tearful night thinking of me going every place with this young man when he would rather have been him going with me.
And is that you and Edsel?
Yes, this is a picture. This was taken not too long after we were married. This is the newlyweds. I expect this is probably as new a picture as we have as newlyweds. We didn't have any picture made. We didn't have any money, but we didn't feel poor, but we were.
And this is the church you went to?
You asked me about the church here.
Okay.
That's the car. That
What
is
kind of car did Edsel have?
that's a Model A Ford, and this shows his payment. On the back of that note, I was just looking at that this morning, and he went in and it told the different times he paid $2.50, $3.50, and he finally got it paid off. He was
And how
so...
much was he making?
$25 was for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. Gracious. You couldn't even go in the grocery store
No, you
nowadays.
couldn't,
Now,
no.
is the car in this picture?
His car, it just barely can see a little bit of the picture, but this is
Now, is that after you was married?
no. I tell you what, let's have that picture back. This is the first time that Edsel went to church with me at Calvary Tabernacle in Toledo. We had just built our new church, and I had invited him to come, not knowing if he would, because we hadn't really gone together seriously that much. But I'll tell you what, just look at that outfit. I was so proud of that outfit. That belonged to my sister Eileen. It was a velvet hat and dress and purse to match. And I was in the church orchestra, sitting on the platform where I could see out the east window. And he hadn't got there yet, but I kept looking out the east window, and sure enough, I saw that little Ford come driving up there, and he came in and sat down in the back to wait for me. But I was in the orchestra sitting on the platform until the music stopped. And then I sang a solo that first time that I had ever sung one. It was called the Mid-Air Convention, and I remember it to this day.
And here's a picture of a building.
This is where after we went together quite a while, and this is where we were married, in Henderson, Kentucky. See that long sidewalk?
Yeah.
Well, that's where we raced up that sidewalk to go and be married. And this is the first picture that we ever had made together. We'd been married, I expect, a couple of years.
Did you have any children yet?
No. We were living in a mother and dad, and I was very, very busy looking after my ready-made family. But it was 2 years. Let me tell you something. When always from the time I was a little girl, I just thought it would be the most wonderful thing to be a mother, because I mothered my dollies just like they were babies. But when we got married, on my way back, my new husband didn't know it, but I was writing names for 6 children.
And want to have a house full.
I always wanted 6 children. And
how many did you have?
I had 5.
5.
But here was my mother. She became ill, and the dear, dear mother. So we lived in the home with her. And this is her with her two youngest, Carol and Velma. And so I looked after the children, and here they are. They had grown just a little bit. That's Velma and Kenny and Carol, my little brother and sister, and that's we had company at that time. This picture was taken, and this is John Gary Burr, so you can lay it there.
Okay, now here are some of your children.
Oh yes, now talk about, we had our 5, but this was one of another most exciting time of my life. I had looked forward to having children, and the years passed quickly, and before you could blink your eye, I became a grandmother.
Well.
And this little darling is is Quint Irwin, and we were so proud of that. Well, Grandpa and I both were so proud of that little fella.
So
That's Quint Irwin.
Okay.
And
then who is this?
that's Jerry and Connie.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
That's Jerry's wife.
Uh-huh. Yes, Jerry and Connie. Now, I want you to look. Could you tell who is who there? That is father and father and son. And you know, when I got a grandchild, I thought, this is like living my life all over again. You could hardly tell the difference. That's Jerry and his son Quint.
Well.
See how they look alike?
Yes.
And then before you know it, there's all of the little children. There's all the first. This is most of the grandchildren. And
now this is a grandchild?
yes, this is a grandchild.
And who is it?
That is Jimbo. But now let's keep that out because I've got them in the wrong place.
Well, we'll put them in here.
Yeah,
and then
okay.
We'll do it. Okay, and this is Jimbo when he's big.
Yeah, that's little Jimbo when he got bigger. And
what's Jimbo's real name?
James Edsel, named after two very important people. The boy that we lost and his grandpa.
Well.
James Edsel, but for some reason or other he got caught. He ended up.
Whose son is this?
That's Jerry's.
Jerry's.
Jerry's youngest son.
Okay, and here's a couple more cute kids.
Okay.
Are they grandchildren also?
These are. We're into the grandkids now. This is Kenny and Beth. Kenny Warfield and Beth Warfield.
And whose children are they?
Those are Myra Michelle's children. And this is another grandson. This is Andy Blankenbaker.
And who's?
This is Ruth, my daughter Ruth's son. And this is his sister, Kelly Ruth. And I've got to line these up better. This is all of the great-grands here.
These great-grandchildren?
Those are, I've got that wrong.
What a bunch.
But I wanted you to notice here, there's 4 generations here. There I am, and my daughter Doreen, and her daughter Marcia, and her daughter Lauren. 4 generations in the ladies' side.
Well.
Look how quickly the years have passed. And then here are 2 of the little great-grands that'll go with these. See all of these little great-grands all lined up together. Isn't that a picture?
That is. So how many great-grandchildren do you have? Do you know?
21.
And how many
And 17 grandchildren, and that's including some step-grands, but to me they're all grandchildren.
And when you was first married,
when we were first married, we lived in the brick home for 2 years. Well, after we had our own little baby, we just thought it'd be so nice if we could just have our own home. So we'd been married for 2 years, and then, would you believe, I had the honor of having my first little baby born on my birthday.
Well.
And this was the little home, and this is the home that my father built, and he had lived there until his family outgrew it. So this was the little home from the brick home. It was kind of I don't really know, but as the crow flies, it would have been about how long did it take to walk through there? About 15 minutes, maybe. but it was close to the big house, close enough that I could get over there and still help look after the family. But we had a home of our own, and we were so thrilled there.
And how many children was born in this home?
All but my first one. So there were 4 born here.
And Jerry was born in the brick home.
He wasn't born in the brick home. None of them were born in the home, but
Right.
but when we lived there, they were all born in the hospital. And they were all born in the Effingham Hospital, but Doreen, and she was born in the Mattoon Hospital because at that time they'd had a terrible fire at Effingham. And so we had to go someplace else. And she was born at Mattoon, but this was our home, and we had a wonderful life there at that little home.
Someone had told me when you brought Jerry home from the hospital that this dog come running up.
Yeah, I was kind of jealous.
He was jealous of the baby?
He didn't want to share with the baby.
So did he watch it though when you put it in the cradle?
Got so that he was very watchful of that little baby. He learned to love it.
Well, okay, now here's another.
Yes, this picture was a later picture of a grandchild after we moved to another place, but I just wanted to show you. There at this little home when we moved that you saw the picture of, I had a garden across the road, and I wanted to take my little baby with me because I wanted to look after him, and I had a wooden box, and I carried the box over there, so little Jerry sat in that wooden box while I hoed my garden.
Well,
and that.
So now who's the girl?
Well, now this is later on. But I just showing this so that you could see what it was to. That's how I kept my little baby safe.
Well.
And here he was. That was my little birthday present. We were thought we were the happiest people living.
So that's you and Jerry.
That's Jerry, and then here is Edsel and Jerry, and he was his daddy's little helper. When he'd hear those horses come plodding up there, he was right out there. And I wish I could find the picture of him sitting on that horse, but he was his daddy's helper. He was right out there helping.
So Edsel farmed?
Yes, he farmed in the bottom ground there. Well, you know, after I had Jerry, and I wanted so much to have a little playmate to go for with him, but you know, when I was carrying my little baby, I was so mixed up. I thought, how could I ever love another baby like I loved my little Jerry? And I thought, can I truly love another little baby? But would you believe when I held that little Jim in my arms, there was no problem.
Well.
He was such a sweet little guy. And he'd look up at me with such earnest eyes. He was a precious baby.
So he was your second child?
He was my second. But while I was in the hospital, Jerry stayed with Grandpa and Grandma Brown. And this picture and the next picture shows him. In that day, you stayed in the hospital for 10 days. That was just the normal thing to do. Well, there's Jerry on the swing with Grandma and Grandpa, or he's with his daddy there, but there's Grandpa and Grandma. And so when I came home from the hospital with baby Jim, I expected a big hug, and you're so glad to see Jerry, and he turned away from he wouldn't look at me.
Was he mad at you because
he just did
for a long time?
I had been gone too long. Grandma was his mommy now. But he soon got over it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And they grew to be such little pals. It was just a joy to watch Jim and Jerry.
Oh, they're so cute.
They just were such little pals, and it was just right to. I had thought that it'd been nice to had a little boy to have a little girl, but I got my 2 little boys, and that was the perfect way to do it.
I see a little girl.
Yes, I finally got my little Ruthie, and those boys, oh my, how they just took such good care of her. The only thing was when Ruthie got a little bit older, for some reason or other, Jim liked to tease her, and he would back her in the corner and hold his arms out like this, and she'd scream and want him to let her loose, and I would kind of scold him. He says, "Mom, I'm not hurting her at all. I'm not hurting her." But he was just backing her in the corner.
You said, "I'm not touching her."
No, I'm not touching
Boy, it'd
her.
be nice to have that car now. That'd be worth
Wouldn't
bunch
it
of
though?
money.
Oh my, and oh how. Let me tell you about that little car. Jerry would get in that little car, and Edsel made a cement sidewalk so that Jerry would have something to ride his little car on. He'd pedal that little car, and Jim would sit there on the step and watch him. Jim was such a solemn little fella, and Jerry come pedaling around there, and he was disgusted with Jim. He says, "Pack old hands and ting, Ted." he wanted Jim to at least show some enthusiasm about his car, but he wouldn't let him ride it.
Oh no. Now we got a couple more.
Yes, I tell you what. Then the years passed along, and Jim was 3 years old, and we got our precious little Ruthie. She was such a joy. And then in 2 more years came baby Doreen, Ruth Elaine, and Doreen Adele. Well, I just thought that I had just the perfect family.
Doreen just looks like a little baby doll.
Doesn't she though?
Like a little tiny doll. And I bet you didn't have any trouble loving them just as much as you did Jerry.
No, isn't that marvelous? But really, I really kind of worried between the birth of Jerry and Jim. I really wondered if I could love another baby like that. But I did. Well, and then after we had our 4, I thought that was a pretty perfect family. So we didn't really think about more children until, well, there's something in between time. Now this picture here, you see the children all in the tent. A tragedy happened about that time. Polio was rampant at that time. Well, my sister Eileen came from Rochester, New York. They came every summer. So they came and were visiting when little Danny boy, I think he was about 4 years old, in the brick home. They always stayed with my father in the brick home. And little Danny was upstairs, and we heard banging, and then he was screaming. Well, he had fallen down the stairway, rolled down the stairway, and he had developed a high fever. Well, they took him to the doctor and found that he had polio.
Wow.
And little Don, this is little Don, right at this spot here. And so they had to take him to Decatur to the hospital, take Danny to the hospital in Decatur. Well, somebody needed to look after the baby, so I took little Don and kept him. I think it was around 2 weeks that Danny was in the hospital. By that time, little Don and I had bonded. And when his mommy came home, brought Danny home, little Don wouldn't go to his mommy. He clung on to me and called me mommy.
Oh,
well, I knew that they were going to have to leave, so his mommy cried and his auntie cried because I had become so attached to him I could hardly bear to leave him. But why I show the tent, old Doc Houghton told us, he says, we didn't know much about that in that day, polio in that day, but he said, you should keep your children quiet and make sure that they have a nap in the afternoon. Can you imagine a hot days that it was in the hot summertime. We had no electricity, no fans. How are you going to make 5 children take a nap in a hot afternoon in a hot house? So we put up a crude little tent thinking that they would be able to sleep there. But see the doggy there?
Yeah.
And with Jerry, the ringleader, can you imagine any of them sleeping? You just didn't expect it to happen. But that's why the tent. That was during the polio season.
Now I see a picture of a little baby.
Yes. Well, I wish I could find the picture. When it came time for little Doreen, she was 6 years old, and I've got a picture. If I still could find it, I don't know what I've done with it, but there they were, all 4 of them out waiting for the bus, and I waved to them, and the bus drove away, and my heart was so lonesome. I thought, how can I ever bear it? The house perfectly quiet. I decided it was time to think about those, the number 6. So anyhow, here's a little baby Myra Michelle. She was my number 5, but and here she is. She got a little big, and she darling.
Isn't she pretty?
And then we bought a farm.
Well.
So we forgot about number 6.
So where was your farm at?
Farm was over at Woodbury. But this is I think I'll hold that picture. I'll pull that aside. No, when it, and we were outgrowing our little cottage, and we started looking for a farm. So.
Now, is this some of your neighbors?
Well, now you ask me at church here.
No. Church has been an important part of your life in the early days, and now also?
Yes, indeed.
And is this some of your church friends?
Yes.
Or?
This is, our neighbor, Mrs. Brewer, Vesta Brewer, had told us about a church group in Toledo. We had been going to the little Salem church, and we love Salem church, but she introduced us to the a Pentecostal faith in Toledo. So we went to church with her, and really were interested in going, and it was Reverend Charles and Ina Seeley, and so they were my pastor, the dearest people you'd ever want to know. So we were going to the Calvary Tabernacle in Toledo. And then after they retired, this is Reverend Jack and Charlene Jenkins, and this is their son, Kevin.
Now, is this a baptism?
Yes, there were many baptisms, and so we were, and I wanted to tell you about my own baptism. It was in February, and I told my pastor, I said, well, I would like to be baptized, and he said, well, there's a bit of ice on the water. I said, I don't care, I want to be baptized. So we went down to the reservoir in Toledo, and I was baptized, and I didn't feel a bit cold.
Well.
That was in February of 19.
And here's a picture of the car.
Yes, this was some of the, we were loaded down, and we always took the kids in the summertime to youth camp down in Murfreesboro, Illinois. And we loaded the kids up. Of course, we had clothes hanging inside, and they asked the forever question, are we there yet? We finally got there, but that was...
And I heard that you was great writing plays.
Well, yes, for years and years. I wrote the plays and directed the plays, and we just had the wonderful few weeks. And I was working at Edelbrick at that time, so I write plays into the morning hours sometimes, but it worked out fine, and we had a wonderful time. And we always had the angel pantomime, and that's one of the many, many times that we had the angel pantomime. And here's some of the little girls. This is Carol Burton and Shelley and Becky Hatton in their little part in the Christmas program. It was wonderful memories there.
Now, did you have a lot of close neighbors where you lived?
Yes. When we were at the brick home, Aunt Belle and Uncle Ed Trimble were our close neighbors, and Aunt Belle was so good to help me. I'll keep this one. Aunt Belle was so good to give me advice. See, my mother was gone, and there were things that I needed to know, like about canning and lots of questions. So my dear Aunt Belle, that was my father's sister, and her husband, Ed Trimble, and they were the close neighbors there. Now,
Did you have a big garden?
Yes, indeed, I had a big garden.
And flowers?
Yes, well, at that home, I could never have flowers because the chicken yard was right next to the garden.
I think you had a picture of the chicken.
Yes, the chicken house was right next to the
Is that Edsel?
that's Edsel feeding the chickens, and so at that home, the yard for the most part I swept it rather than mowing it, but I did have a big garden. But the other neighbor, I don't have a picture of Hugh and Juanita Holzapfel, but here's their boy Steve, and Steve was at our house almost as much as he was at home. But Hugh and Juanita were wonderful neighbors. I just don't have any picture to show for them. But there's Steve, and he and Jerry they kept things merry.
So there's 3 boys
Well,
there?
that's little Jim.
Okay.
But I wanted to show a picture of Steve. He was Jerry's buddy.
And where did you live?
That was in the first little cottage there.
Okay.
And then, this is my neighbor's. I'll tell you what, this was a neighbor both at Woodbury and where I live today.
Well,
Leroy and Bertha May Westendorf. They were close neighbors at Woodbury, lived there for, well, I don't remember how many years exactly, but they lived there until he got a job up at Decatur, I guess it was. And they moved there, but after he retired, they started looking for a home. And would you believe, the home that had been on our property there at north of Jewett, they loved that home, so we have them as neighbors again today. Wow. Wonderful people.
so in other words, you moved from the one home to...
And they
over
moved
by
too.
Jewett. Well,
But that was later that they came, after we did.
now is this a family reunion?
Yes, we had many family reunions. Yes, this is one of the many family reunions. You know, I mentioned that I had promised my mom that I would keep the family together. So every year it's been about 60-some years that I had taken care of the family reunions. And this is one of the many that we had. I could spend the whole afternoon showing pictures of the family reunions.
Well,
But this is another one of the family reunions. And I could spend a whole afternoon.
Who was in charge of it?
I was in charge of it until just about 3 years ago when, well, little before that, my daughters eased into helping me. I still directed it, but they eased into helping me. And now we have eased their daughters into taking over for it, and that's a wonderful help. There's another reunion. Now this was over at Woodbury, and that's my father there. By that time, my dad was in a wheelchair, but he wanted to cut the melon.
Well.
And that's part of the family reunion there. Here's another one. I want you to take particular notice of the two boys in front.
Are they the meanest in the bunch?
I tell you, they kept things lively. And you can tell by that picture that they kept things lively.
And where was this taken?
This was taken at my dad's place. We had the reunion that time over at my dad's place. That didn't make any difference to them. They made it merry wherever they were. And this is one, now, if you ever ask for a special memory, this, I could tell you, is a special memory. This is the children all out. You see the dolls there. This is Billy Browning, and he has Ruthie's doll. I forget the name of it. Ruthie could probably tell you. And then you can see the other dollies, but the middle dolly is real. That's,
oh, really?
That's baby Shelley.
Well, and who's holding her?
Linda is holding her, and Becky is holding a dolly, and Doreen is holding a dolly, and Jim, the athletic in the bunch, he's holding his ball glove in front of his mouth. Would you believe what Jerry's holding? He and Bowser, I believe it was Bowser.
A dog?
Uh-huh. His was a dog. He was always in the woods, and Bowser was right there with him. But that is one of my favorite pictures.
And who's the other?
Ruthie over here.
Okay.
She has her a dolly there. But
and this is Doreen?
This is Doreen, and this is Linda. This is Becky.
And who's Linda?
Linda is my sister Velma's children. Linda, Becky, and Bill. We kept them a good part of summers because Velma worked.
Well.
And the kids all had such a great time. I can't remember now where I bedded all of them, but we had a great time. And then this is when we moved to Woodbury. This is our home there. And our girls can tell you that there was a lot of mowing there, because by that time the boys were big enough to help their dad in the field, so the girls did the biggest part of the mowing.
Well, did they have a rider?
No, they didn't have any rider. But now, by the time that this was taken, we did finally get a rider. But that's our Woodbury home there. We added on to that Woodbury home. And this is...
now this is Edsel?
Edsel and two of the grandchildren. Let's see.
No, wouldn't be grandchildren. Be your children.
No, this is great-grands. No, this is great-grandchildren here.
Well...
Yep, we had some great-grands there. See, right here, this is...
Well, there's Jerry.
Yeah, this is a different picture. This is one of his inventions. Notice the wheels?
Uh-huh.
I have to tell you about his invention, too. One day I missed the screen off of my basement window. And... I finally found out that I believe it made a mouse trap or some such thing.
Oh, you want to tell me now who's all in here?
Yes. Ruth is here. Linda is next, holding baby Shelley. And there's Billy, and there's Becky, and there's Jim.
Okay.
And who am I missing?
And there's a boy up here.
Oh, that's Doreen.
Oh.
She just got her mouth open and got her hair pulled back.
Sorry, Doreen.
No, that's all right. See, you can't tell. She's got her hair pulled way back. But don't you like that contraption?
Yeah. But Jerry's not in it?
No. I guess he wanted to hide that time. I don't know. But this is something else. In the summertime over at Woodbury, I never had to worry about my bedclothes getting moth in them or anything like that, because see, they hung out on the clothesline most of the time making tent houses. And oh, they had such a wonderful time at the tent houses until the boys had come sneaking up and pull the clothespins off, and then the tent houses would fall. So I had a lot of time making.
And who's in that picture?
Well, let's see.
He's got the big one on the screen, so you can just turn it towards you and look.
Okay. Doreen is in the middle, and Becky is with us, and this is Carolyn Hatton. So they had a wonderful time in their treehouse. In their tent house. Once in a while, they would think they would want to sleep out there, but then the boys would scare them, so they come back in.
There, looks like they're having a
Oh,
wedding.
yes, they had lots of weddings. This is little, we called her Myra at that time, her Myra Michelle. She eventually became Shelley. But John Ward, the Lester's John from Mississippi, he was always the bridegroom. No matter which of them was the bride, he was always the bridegroom. And then there was Becky, and then Johnny's little sister, and they always, oh my, they had lots of weddings. But John was always the groom.
And who's the other two girls?
Becky Hatton.
Go ahead and turn around.
Becky Hatton, and let's see, John's sister. Right off the bat, I can't even think of my own niece, and I can't remember who that other little girl was. Oh, I know who it was. It was a little Burton girl.
Well,
and John.
it was some neighbors.
No, they were little church. That was a little church man. Well, now this was one of the hardest things in the world for me. Jerry decided he was old enough. He wanted to be on his own, so he was going to go to live at Effingham, and I just it was so hard. I didn't think I could ever stand it. And little Shelley, she cried. She couldn't think of him leaving home. But see, he got grown up. That happens.
Here's a picture of Exel, and is this one of your daughters?
Yes, that's a picture of Ruth. After her graduation, she went to Bible school up in Minnesota for a while. And this is Ruth getting ready to leave that was before she went to college at Charleston.
Well, and this beautiful young lady, I think she must be you and another daughter.
Oh, that is, yes, that's Doreen, and at her graduation, and that was an exciting time for her. And for all of us. That was in 1967. I wish I had a picture right handy of all of the graduations, but I don't happen to have them. I think they have got to the children's houses some.
And this here, it looks like Doreen in band.
Yes. Now that I get that. I was so happy to have the children in band, and
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
this is Doreen in one of her band times. It was in 1965 when she was about 16. She played the clarinet, and I thought was quite interesting because I played the clarinet through high school. And then I was proud of my boys. They were. Jerry played the trombone, and Jim played the, I forget what he played. Can't think of it right now. I'll try to think of that later.
Well.
But they both played in the band. The four older children all played in the band. Ruth played a saxophone, but Shelley just wasn't interested in it. But the older four played instruments in the band, and we always enjoyed that.
Now, is this Jim and his son?
Yes, this is Jim, our dear boy that we lost. And this is his little son, and Jim didn't live too much longer. You can see the disease had affected his jaws. And
What was wrong with him?
he had cancer.
Well,
And
when did he just have the one child?
yes, little Jason was just 4 years old when Jim passed away. But Jim taught up until the month that he passed away.
Well, he taught school.
Taught school, and he
What subject?
well, he coached, and well, he taught different things. I'm not remembering for
History
sure.
or English or?
Do you know right off the cuff? I'm not remembering what Jim did teach,
Well,
but that's
and what year did he die? Do you remember?
7. I tried to erase
Block
that.
it out,
I tried to block
understand.
that out.
Yeah.
It was such a sorrowful time. I found it very
Now,
hard.
This here is a picture of an old barn.
Yes, after we had got our children all raised over at Woodbury, and it was getting near time to retire, we wanted to be nearer Toledo, nearer a town near where home folks were. So we had bought this piece of property after my father passed away. We bought a piece of property, and we decided that we would build a home back in the hill and have a partially underground home. And there was a little barn there. So we thought if our Woodbury place sold, we would just fix a little temporary home out of the barn. But so we got started at it,
And live there until you get your new
Well,
house built, right?
there was a lot to it, but there was a lot to get done.
And here's another
Yes,
photograph.
this is little by little we found windows and got bargains in everything, and we started in working away. And here's Edsel. We got these windows for $1 a piece.
Wow.
And we found windows to put across the front and windows on the inside, and we really worked and got a lot done. Well, here we were in the bathroom, and all the time we looked after Shelley's two little ones, Kenny and Beth. They were our little pals during all the time of working over the old barn. And this shows us in the little bathroom. And this is, you'll notice in the very background is we had got the cabinets in there. And if you'll notice, we have a card table there with a stove, with our electric skillet there. So I would prepare food at home and bring it over there. And we finally got electricity. You'll see a cord going up here. Edsel did all of the electrical work except hooking it to the outside post.
Well.
But there we go. And then here,
Did he do the carpenter work, like
He-
put in the windows?
all of everything. Well, here's the little aisle in the center here. It was the little corn crib. So we made it into a stove island. In the back, you'll see cabinetry across the back. Well, that was the little section where the baby piggies were born. And that's where I fed my little, I put my little grandkids up on, hoisted them up onto the cabinetry there, and I fed them. I fed them cream of wheat. And this is what I would sing to him. Cream of wheat is so good to eat. We have it every day. Cream of wheat is so good to eat. It makes us shout, hooray! It's good for growing children and grown-ups too to eat. For all of the family's breakfast, you can't beat cream of wheat. And that's little Kenny and Beth. and Kelly and Andy, all sitting up there, and Grandma's feeding them cream of wheat up on where the baby piggies were
Were
born.
you look so young there?
Well,
You
I
look
was.
so young to have that many little grandchildren.
Well, I was mighty proud of those little fellas.
And here's a young-looking woman, looks like cutting somebody's
Yes, yes, I just have to tell you that Edsel only went to the barber 2 times in our whole married life.
Wow.
I cut his hair, and that was 2 times when I was in the hospital with a baby.
hair.
But I cut his hair all the time. It saved a lot of money, and he was very happy with it. And yes, we started growing plants, and added on this little section of greenhouse.
Right here.
And we raised plants in there, raised them under those slanted windows, the perfect place. It was just like Florida under those windows.
Well,
So we enjoyed
this
that.
shows a bunch of wood.
Yes,
Did you heat the
Edsel,
house with wood?
we heated the house with wood for the most part. Now we had a gas furnace. If we had to be away, the gas furnace would, we could let it run, but for the most part. And Edsel was pretty clever in how he ventilated the wood furnace. They told him it wouldn't work, but it did. And we heated for the most part, but you can see all that wood. He spent a lot of time in the summertime going down into the woods, and I'd go with him. And we got a lot of wood in. I even learned to help him saw it up with whatever he
Load
had.
splitter? Or?
Yeah, Yeah, we worked at it. But
Now, since it was a barn originally, so did it have a dirt floor or did it have boards?
it had a dirt floor and a
Did
lot
it smell?
It was quite a deal. And there was, in the little bedroom, there was a big tree root grew under there. Well, I stripped down as much as I dared, and I dug and I dug and I dug, and I got that tree root out of there.
Well,
That was my job.
did you use a hatchet? Or?
I just used everything I could find to get that. Well, I dug the dirt out, and then I pounded them, and got that all out of there.
Well.
And then if you can see this picture, there's the little bedroom I made out of that.
Well.
And Edsel worked we both worked at everything.
Now this here is a newspaper.
Yes, they
I
came.
presume it was Mattoon newspaper.
Yes, it was.
And did they come and interview
They
you?
came and interviewed me. Sue Smizer did that.
It says the old gray barn just ain't what it used to be.
That's right.
And here it was before, and there it was after.
You know, these windows were slanted just perfectly until it just like Florida,
Well,
and it helped heat the house.
and is that where you raised your plants?
We raised the biggest part of our plants to begin with. We raised them right in under these windows. We put shelves even in the windows on the inside. The windows were like this on the inside. So we put shelves there, and then we had a wide bench clear across the front. So we started our plants there, and then we took them out to the greenhouse. We'd have
I
sometimes.
think we got some pictures here of that.
We might have.
Okay.
Yes, now here's the greenhouse. This is the inside of the greenhouse. And we had the plants growing there. They looked lush, and they were great plants. Everybody seemed very pleased with our plants.
Well,
And
you
we
sold them?
sold thousands of them. Well, would I say thousands? I guess it would be.
And is this your garden?
Yes. Now Edsel he never was too happy to share part of his garden with me with my flowers, but I talked him into it. And he let me grow a few rows across the front, but I thought it added beauty. Yes, and this is another angle. And see Mr. Brown in the background. So that was my part of the garden. And
Is that you?
Yes,
In front of all those beautiful flowers?
this happens to be flowers that I grew at Woodbury.
Well,
But I always loved to have my flowers. So now this was no problem here at all because it was in front of the hog fence. So it just kind of helped hide the hog fence. And this is what it looked like when it was all finished.
I think I got 2 pictures.
Did you?
there. Yeah.
Yes, it was. And I'll tell you about this sign. I think there were not two prouder people than that. We told Jerry what we'd like to have, and John Ward helped think of a name to name it, Brownwood Acres. So down in Virginia, we let Jerry know, and he made a beautiful sign that we were both so proud of, and I'm still proud of that sign today. And he,
Now, it's made out of redwood.
I think it was redwood,
That's
and
beautiful.
and then he redid the sign for me a while back. I hope it lasts as long as I do. And then we had lots of picnics there, family get-togethers. You can see in the background there, and it made a wonderful place to.
Now, can you name part of them?
Yes.
The pictures on the screen.
Yes, you can see me standing there. I mean, you can see my back and Velma's back on the right, and then there's Bob and Wanda, and then let's see. Oh, Kathy Ward is in the back. Barely see her head.
Yeah.
And there's.
Who's the little boy?
That's Kenny,
Well,
and I can't tell who this is Rosie Walden there. So that was just one of the many picnics that we had there.
then here's the Christmas picture.
Yes,
in the
we
old
had wonderful
farmhouse.
We had wonderful Christmas get-togethers there, and there's Jerry on the end and Vaughn, and there's Doreen's husband, Ted Tatnall, and at that time, I can't think of his name, Shelley's husband, over at Greenup.
Oh, Dave.
Yeah, I'll write that on the back.
Yeah, Dave. Drum.
Dave Drum was in our family at that time, and then little Beth and her friend, and then there's Ruth and Doreen and Shelley, and there's Dixie Howard.
Well,
And here's Edsel and me, and you'll notice a little necklace around his neck. And one of the little grandchildren had made that out of shell macaroni.
oh dear.
So he wore it around his neck. And then
Now, who's the
this
baby?
is little Lauren, or not Lauren, it's Aaron's little girl,
Well,
and Grandma Brown. So we had a
Here's
wonderful
one,
time.
Edsel,
Oh,
you're taking it
yes. Edsel, it shows him relaxing in our wood furnace room. He loved to go in there and sit right beside the stove. He pulled off his boots and he sat down, and I can still see him sitting there in the wood furnace room. And I had a recliner on the opposite side, so we truly enjoyed that little furnace room. And that was.
now did he retire?
Yes, he was retired then, but he couldn't stand to retire. By the way, I want to get that picture of the. Yes, he retired, but he couldn't stand the idleness. So there was an opening at the Life Center in the piecemeal department of delivering meals from Casey to Marshall. So he took that job and did that until the very week that he passed away. And he even on Wednesday On Tuesday, he went Monday and Tuesday. Of course, I went with him and I drove because he really wasn't well at all that time. So on Wednesday, he says, Bertie, I think maybe you better go today without me. He said, I think I better rest today. But in 2 days, he was gone. He stood.
He had cancer.
He had cancer. But he drove to the very last, and that was him. I don't think we really need both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and here's my family. We lost our... Now, this would be a good place to put Jim's picture.
We already done Jim's.
Well, we'll have it. Well, anyhow, here's my kids, and we're sitting in front of our slanted windows there at our dear little barn home. That was a wonderful get-togethers.
That's a nice picture of all of you. And Jim's already passed away.
Yes, long before that.
And here it says Christmas 72.
Yes, that was now this was back at Woodbury.
Well.
And in my Woodbury home, we made a kitchen out. No, we used the bedroom and the bedroom that they had, and we opened the wall between the two rooms, and we made a kitchen where the bedroom was, and then they had a kitchen dining room but it wasn't enough room, so we opened up the whole thing, but it just left one bedroom.
Well.
So we built on another addition, but this was one of our many get-togethers.
And I think it has the names on the
Yes, well, that was when Doreen was married to Willie Washburn, and then Sue Brown was next, and then little Jason, she was holding Jason. Well, then Edsel was next, and Shelley was next, and then I was next, and Ruth, and her husband at the time, Melvin Frick, and little Aaron. He was in that picture.
And here's one of your barn.
Oh, yes, that was now this is the two cooks here, Jerry and his dad. They were fixing up one of the many dishes that, well, Edsel loved to make mashed potatoes, so I have an idea that that's what they're doing. Jerry's trying to tell him, but I don't think he can tell his dad too much about mashed potatoes.
Oh, it says they was working on oyster stew.
Oh, that's
Christmas
right.
Eve,
That's right.
1989.
That is right. That other kettle has chili in it. They made oyster
Oh, you're making me hungry.
Well, they had a time. They were the cooks that day. See, there's the Christmas along the top. That was I forgot to tell you that. Christmas was always oysters. Grandma Brown started this. It was oyster stew and chili.
Your grandmother or your mother?
Edsel's mother.
Edsel's mother.
No,
Okay.
we wouldn't have got by with just that with our big family. But this just shows you what a wonderful time we had. And Grandma had lots of presents that day.
Yeah, looks like it.
Yeah, that was, those are times I'll never forget.
And here's another Christmas one.
Yes, this is me getting ready for Christmas. And I'd like for you to notice the clock. That was the first clock that my mom and dad had. And they had their little home that clock was in. It caught fire and burned. And they saved the clock. And so Dad let me have the clock. And now today, it's over. I gave it to Ruth, and she had it refinished and cleaned it all. And it runs today, and it's in her home in Indianapolis. But that was the only thing they saved out of their house. They made sure they saved that clock.
Well,
And
so that's got to be awful special.
yes, it is.
And this says grandchildren, Easter 1981.
Oh yes, this was the home over in Woodbury, and we made another thing we made was a stairway to the attic. All they had was a hole in the ceiling, but we made a stairway. But it made a wonderful place for the kids to play, and that is.
I think it tells on the back maybe who they are.
Yes, all right, from left to right. I can't see through this one, but I'll make sure I have that right. In front was little Andy and little let's see who's there. Beth, little Beth. She's the little doll
She's
baby.
a little pretty one.
Andy, and then Marcy, and Kenny, and Kelly, and Aaron. And they had a great time on that stairway.
And this goes up the barn house.
Not the barn house. This was over at Woodbury. I should have had this with Woodbury.
Really?
That was at Woodbury.
But the barn house did have.
The barn house had a big stairway. This was not as near as long as the barn house stairway. Oh, I wanted to tell you about the barn house stairway. When we were building the barn, we just got our materials everywhere, but we got quite a few things, and they were they had over at Effingham a place where you could go. They built houses, but they had their extra stuff over there. Well, I was kicking around through the grass, and I ran onto this stairway. It was built. It was wide stairway, nice stairway. And we didn't know how we'd get it home because we had some kind of a little truck, and I don't remember names of trucks. But anyhow, it was a full stairway, and so the only way we could get it on was to tie it on the top of that little truck. And it looked funny. You thought it would have overbalanced the truck, but we got that stairway home, and would you believe it fit in that space that we had pre-cut?
Oh dear.
But that stairway fit to we only had to cut a little bit off of the bottom of it so that we could make a little landing there. But it fit. It was just wonderful.
Luck of the Irish.
Luck of the Irish.
And here's a picture.
Yes, this is one of our many fun times at when we had our family get together. And there goes Jerry hauling the little kids around over the hills there at Brownwood. But they loved that. That was taken the year that after Grandpa passed away. And that's little Connor Sams and Corinne Deese and little Karina Brown. That was, the kids always looked forward to that. We had wonderful times.
Now, what do you do now?
Well, I work at the Life Center. I go there, ordinarily go in most every day, and I help with the people calling in to do their circuit breakers and so forth. So I take the phone calls and make appointments for those who are wanting to make the circuit breaker, and then I just do various things. I call bingo. I had never played bingo in my life, but I could call bingo.
Well.
And then if somebody comes in and I'm not busy and they want to play a game of skip-bo, I'll play skip-bo with anybody.
Just a card game.
A card game. So we have a great time.
Now, I also heard that you do a lot of cross stitch.
Oh my, yes. I always have some kind of cross stitch going. In fact, yes, this is one of them. This is one of the pictures. I suppose I would safe in saying I've made at least 20 cross stitch pictures, more than that. Oh yes, it's more than that, because Ruth has ever so many hanging in her house. Doreen does, Shelley does. I've just made pictures and pictures and pictures of cross stitch, but I have made, and pillows. I think I might have a picture there of some of the pillows that I have made for the to give as gifts, and they're just all kinds of various pillows. Here are horses and kitties and all kinds of pillows, and I've made lots of dolls and all kinds of things, and I've made a baby quilt for all of my great-grandkids.
Well, all of them? How many?
For at least 20. Now, this was not a quilt, but I made this little, this is Ruth's little step-grandson, and I made him a little, I don't really know what you call that, but it's a little wall hanging, but he was so proud of it.
Or just a little blanket?
Little something. And this is for Jason's little girl, and it has kept me busy making. And this is for Darren's little Madison. Is it Darren's? Addison, little Addison. And this is for, my little namesake, little Lydia. And this is, my name's Lydia Alberta. And I finally, after all these years, got me a namesake. And that's little Lydia.
Well, and then here's a bunch of little
Oh my goodness. Yes, I made my little girls, well, Becky and Linda Browning were with us almost every summer, most of the summer. So at this time, with this picture, I made them, we called it the butterfly dresses. So I made each one of them a dress just alike. But let me tell you, I don't have a picture here to show about it, but when I finally got electricity, we didn't have electricity for a while, but I got electricity, and I could make had buttonhole makers. So my little boys got, I don't know how many shirts I made them, but I was so proud of that buttonhole maker that they got a lot of shirts, and I made proud to make the buttonholes.
So did you make their pants also?
Oh, I made, not when they got to wearing jeans, but I made I've got little pictures of them in their little outfits that I made them. Yes, I made them little outfits too. And this is
and here's a beautiful quilt that you have made, or wall hanging.
Yes, well, that's I'll tell you about that. I started this, and by the way, every one of these little sunbonnet Sues has a dress that made out of the dresses that I I made a good many of my own clothes because I was in 4-H and I loved to sew. So I started that when I was probably about 16.
Really?
So,
making the blocks?
As I would wear that particular dress and have a little scrap from it, I'd make a sunbonnet Sue. So after I finally was married, and I thought, well, then when I knew that I was going to have a little one, I thought, well, maybe I ought to get that quilt finished in case I get me a little girl. Well, I didn't get it finished, and I got a little boy. So when it come time then that I had Jim a couple of years later, I thought, I really ought to get that little quilt finished. Well, I didn't get it finished then, and so 3 years later, I got me a little girl, but then I was too busy to finish it. So it has laid in just the blocks. I had the blocks made, and through all these married years, I've had the blocks and just never did get it finished until about a month or so ago, I decided now was the time to get that finished. So I finally got it finished up. And this is my Sunbonnet Sue quilt that I started when I was about 16. So how old is it? I'm 90.
So now these was your dresses?
Dresses.
Did you have aprons or?
Mostly it was, as I remember, mostly it was just dresses that I wore.
Well.
And of course it was always,
Now that is just beautiful, and the handwork on them.
yeah, I was very
awesome.
particular. I was very particular about it. Always was with my sewing. It was very proud that I won entered my sewing in the fair, and I got some several firsts, but not always first. One time in the 4-H, my sister and I had some sewing in the same category, and she won over me, and I didn't like it.
Well.
I got second and she got first, but then that was all right. But we had
So do you still cross stitch?
I have something going all the time. Yes, I have a cross stitch that I've got started for a grandson that just got married in July. Jerry's son, we call him Bo.
Well.
Jimbo or Bo. And I've got something that I'm working on for him right now for their wedding. Didn't quite get it done, but I had I had started one that that I had promised to Kelly when she gets married. So I did get it finished up, but I don't have it framed yet. But I've got hers ready. She plans to get married before the year's over. So I will have hers done, and I must get Jimbo's finished.
Well, I have some more pictures here, and it looks like maybe anniversaries.
Oh, yes. I don't have one for each of our anniversaries, and I can't even tell you what anniversary it was. But oh my. We've celebrated and celebrated, and here I am feeding. Now this was a surprise one on our, I think this was our 60th. And Bertha made a beautiful cake. And I just had an old dress on. I wasn't dressed up, and here everybody come. They made it a surprise, and everybody came in, and we had a great time. There I am feeding Edsel the cake, and this was our. I think this was our 40th. These are not in order, but this is another wedding anniversary. We had 61 years together.
Well,
That seems like that ought to be our age, not how long we were married.
a long time. Oh, you still look young there.
Well, I was younger than I am today.
Here's someone's wedding.
Oh, this was Doreen's wedding over in Indianapolis. She got married in a fine old home, which they rented out, and that's her daddy proudly walking her down around the side to go into the church or into the home.
Beautiful dress.
There's another wedding. This is Jim and Sue when they got married. Now I don't know right offhand the year they got married.
And then here's one, and you've got a book like you're marrying.
Oh, well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Well, that was last summer, and that was down in North Carolina. And Andy and Heather got married, and they asked me to have a part in the wedding. In fact, and when you say it looked like I was marrying him, that's what the minister said. They had a sweet lady minister marry them, and she said, "I think you had the wrong person marrying them. I think this lady should have been the one that married him." But I read to them I read to them a scripture, "Whither thou goest, I will go," and that was what I read to them.
Now this is your grandson?
That's Ruth's son, Andy. Andy and Heather. They live in South Carolina. And this is little Beth. Beth and Mike, and this is her little Aiden and Mike's 2 children. So they were married in last year in 2009. So that
Nice
was
picture. And whose daughter is she?
that's Mike's daughter.
No, I meant Shelley.
That's Shelley. Oh, that's Shelley's daughter.
Yeah.
Beth.
And it looks like you've been a busy woman.
Oh, this was a graduation. Now we're coming to graduations. After see, I didn't get to go to college because my mother was sick, and I missed out on the scholarship that they offered by 1/4 of a point. But Edsel always said that, well, if you had gone to college, she said, I wouldn't have got you. So, but I was needed at home to look after, I promised my mom I would look after the children. And so Edsel and I were married. Well, I guess my, what do you call him? He's doing this thing. He wouldn't be here either if I'd have gone to college.
Your son?
So, well, let me tell you about this. The kids really surprised me. This was at the reunion a couple of years ago. Little Beth came to me. She says, Grandma, I need you to go to the bathroom with me. Well, I had no idea what was up. So we got into the bathroom. I thought maybe she was ill. But when I got in there, she brings up this cap and gown. I thought, what's up here? And she says, here, Grandma, put this on. So I put this on, and then here they gave me this beautiful bouquet. I think it was out of your garden. And they had me march out to this song of pomp and circumstance. Everybody had quickly all gathered moved their chairs and gathered like in a congregation, and they sang, or they played pomp and circumstance, and I walked out, and they had me, they told me that I had graduated from the, I'll have to remember just what they call that, but a school of, anyhow, showing that I had
Higher education?
Higher, yeah, I'll have to remember. I'll have to get that, write it down here. Anyhow, I graduated, but that was so exciting. And I have the, it was Kelly's cap and gown, and by the way, that's still hanging in my closet.
Well,
to show that I graduated.
now did they give you
from the School of Family Preservation.
Oh, very good. So now did they give you a diploma?
Yes, oh, by the way, help me remember that. I've got it hanging on the wall.
Oh, you want a picture of it?
I want to bring it, I want to show that picture. Help me remember it.
And here's somebody else's graduation.
Yes, that was another graduation. That's Doreen's graduation. And I'm not remembering the year. I'll have to, well, she'll know the year she graduated. I'm not good at remembering. And that's Kyra and Marcy. And there's Grandma and Grandpa giving them congratulations that we've had lots of graduations. And here's Jason. This is Jim's boy, Jason, and he was adopted by his stepfather, who, by the way, was Jim's doctor. And Jim's Dr. Fisher, so caring, you would never have known but what Jason was, his own flesh and blood.
Well.
And here's Jason as he graduated. And now we're getting into the military. I've had several of our grandchildren have been in the military. And here's little Marcy. She was in the military, and she ended up working in an office in Washington, D.C. before she got out of service. And then here's Shelley's boy, Kenny, we were he was seeing him off to go, and here's Jerry's son Kevin. I don't happen to have a picture of all of the boys that were in service, but I've got a few of them. We're very proud of them. Darren, it was a doctor in service, and he's now living in Ocala, Florida. And
Quint went.
Quint, who is an artist, he's living now in California. He was also in the Marines, but he chose not to stay in the Marines too long. Oh, by the way, oh yes.
We're moving to a new house, so you had to give up your barn house, right?
Oh, yes. Well, I'll tell you why. We made the mistake of making the roof too slanted. We built on a section to the east of our little barn home. It was a great little place to grow our plants, and we got windows clear around the whole thing, and it was just a wonderful little place to work our plants. But somehow or another, Edsel said his mistake was that the roof was too shallow, and it always leaked. Well, the children worried after Edsel had gone for fear that I would get electrocuted, I guess. But anyhow, they began suggesting that I move to town. I said, no way, I did not want to go to town. I loved it out where I am. And I said, besides, Jerry lives close, he'll see after me. And so I said that they still kind of insisted that it wasn't safe to live there. So I said, well, if I can find somebody to take my little barn home down and save it and not burn it, as some suggested that we'd use it as a practice for the firemen to burn it down, and I couldn't bear that. So I told him that if I could find somebody that could take it down and use it, fine. So I just invited anybody to come in and take any part that they could use, and a lot of people did. Joe Brandenburg's have 3 of my ceiling fans on their enclosed porch. They love it, but different people got different things until it is used. Everything was used. So then we got the double wide and doing real well in it and love it. And Jerry built on a porch on the front and a porch on the back, and it's just wonderful. I really like it now. I got used to it, and then I was happy to see the little barn go down since it was used well. And yes, this is, I wanted to show you the front porch. It has lattice on each end and on the top. Now the north porch has a roof, but I like the lattice. Jerry made me a lattice one on the south side, and this is Jim's son Jason and me, and my pretty little porch there on the south that has the lattice top.
Now I guess you just had a birthday, didn't you?
Oh
and
my.
You've been celebrating for 2 months.
I sure have, and you can see that I have my birthday hat on there, and my niece Kathy Sponsel made a beautiful, beautiful cake, and I want you to notice my beautiful bouquet. Thank you, Dixie, all over again for that beautiful bouquet out of my garden. And I want you to see the cake, and let me read you what it says. May God, and listen, I'll tell you, little Beth looked and looked until she found just the words she thought would be fitting for Grandma's 90th birthday, and she had requested 90 roses. So somewhere in here and along the edge are 90 roses, but this is the verse that she chose. May God give you always a sunbeam to warm you, a moonbeam to charm you, a sheltering angel so nothing can harm you, laughter to cheer you, faithful friends near you, and whenever you pray, heaven to hear you. Happy 90th birthday, Lydia Alberta, with love from your many friends and family.
Isn't that beautiful?
It is beautiful. I did hate to cut that, but I did. And this is my pastor, Brother and Sister Jenkins, and then in the background, John Ward painted a beautiful mural of the old home place where I was raised, and at the top it says Thornton Ward Historic Estate. And so I'm still celebrating my 90th birthday.
Now, so when this here was at the reunion?
This was at the reunion. Then
What date was that?
that was July the 31st, 1910. And then celebrated again at
Oh, didn't you go to Indianapolis?
I went to Indianapolis. They celebrated over there for me.
2 weeks, wasn't it?
2 weeks in Indianapolis, and while I was there, I was honored to go with Doreen to the prison, where she gives lessons helping. They don't call it a prison. They call it the Indianapolis. See if I can remember the name. Anyhow, it's it is a place where people are getting ready to get out of prison. So she is giving lessons there, she and her husband, and she invited me to go along, and I had to get permission, but I talked to her class, where there were 18 of them, and I told them, I said, I'm Grandma Brown. I want you to think of me as Grandma Brown. And I told them, Doreen surprised me. She wanted me to tell my life story. Well, I just told my life story as much as it rolled out. And at the end of it, I said, I just wish that I could love every one of you. I want a hug before I leave. They hopped right up from their chairs, lined up in a long line there, and every one of them came and gave me a big hug. Doreen said after they went back to their seats, she said, I want you to write a letter to Grandma and tell her what her talk meant to them. They did. They sat down and wrote me, and she said, now, I will give these to my mother. She will go take them home and read them and answer your letter. So almost all day the next day, I wrote answer to every letter. But I'll back up a bit. At the end, almost at the end of that session, Doreen's husband, Ted, burst in. He said, I am so sorry to bother you, but something spectacular has happened. So in comes this big cake. Here comes another birthday cake. And they cut it all, and believe you me, there was not one crumb left in that birthday cake. They were so thrilled with it.
And didn't all of you then go to Terre Haute on the way home?
Yes, on the way home. They had something else pretty exciting. First time ever, I was in a race for the, it's a cancer drive. And the family, several of the family went with me. Now we should have a picture of that up on the wall. We will. And we had a great drive. I couldn't walk all that distance, so I went in the wheelchair, but I told him, I says, listen, I'm determined I'm going to walk the last part of this race, and I did. I walked about, it was beginning to sprinkle, and I was really fortunate to be able, I walked the last full block, and they cheered me on.
And when you got home, did somebody from the newspaper come and interview you?
Oh, yes. I got quite a write-up on that, on two sides of a page, and so that was pretty exciting.
And you also had company that week after you
Yes, on my real birthday, my nephew from South Carolina called and said, Aunt Bertie, I'm going to come and see you for your birthday. And so he drove all that distance to come up and spend time with me on my birthday, and then drove back to South Carolina. So I have just had a wonderful birthday.
And where did you eat lunch that day?
Well, that day I went up to Charleston, went to Sunday school with Shelley, and then she and little Beth at Beth's house fixed me another birthday dinner and another cake. So I have just really had a wonderful 90th birthday.
And then that evening, didn't you have a bunch of company?
Yes,
And I think made a cobbler this time, didn't they?
Yes, I can't lose much weight this round. Yes, Annie Brandenburg, Annie and Joe, and Pat and Gary Evans, and names don't come off my tongue like I want them to. Doris and Bill Gold, all of the Brandenburgs, and then would you believe Jerry and Dixie showed up?
Well.
And the two little doggies.
And then you went to see your sister, was it? That night?
Well, went to see her that day. I had gone to see Velma, and well, she went with us up to the dinner. We went and picked her up. So I got to see my little sister Velma. She and I are the only living ones of the 10.
Well.
So it's been a wonderful, wonderful celebration. I have been blessed beyond words.
Well, here, give me a hug. I think this interview's over.
Oh, well, thank you. You've been a wonderful questioner.
I enjoyed it.
It's been great. Life is good.